Got 3 down in the basement.
I heard pop, pop, pop.
And another med unit.
Shots were ringing out.
You think you had 2 additional in the basement?
Pop, 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 pop.
And I thought, this isn't right. This really isn't right.
They survived Standard Gravure, the shooting at the Louisville printing company that is now only this parking lot. The physical reminder of the nightmare of that day 30 years ago is gone. Mike Campbell shot 6 times. 30 years later, what's going through your mind now that you look at that site and it's gone?
There's nothing there. Yeah, there's nothing there.
Jackie Miller shot 4 times.
When they were getting ready to hit the thing with the wrecking ball, I came down here and I sat and I looked at it and I told God, you know, I would really love to be the one to release that ball.
John Stein shot twice and in the head.
And I'm crippled to the right side now.
8:30 a.m. on Thursday, September 14th, 1989, WHAS 11 Chief Photographer Ken Bradley was on the job.
Oh my God, you're kidding.
When this happened, chaos.
Is he still in the building? Or did he come out? I have no idea. I thought it was firecrackers.
Bradley noticed people streaming out of the plant and learned for the first time the terror underway inside.
What the hell is it? Westpacker.
Joseph Westbecker, an employee out on disability for mental illness, suddenly showed up. He was still inside shooting when this video was recorded. He had with him an AK-47 and other guns. And you can see from right here, he also had more firepower, a bigger gun than the police were carrying at the time.
You need to get somebody down there.
Ken Bradley followed EMS inside. First responders rushed in, most with no body armor. One of the country's first mass shootings
What hospital are we going to?
and workplace shootings ended when Westbecker took his own life.
7 you've sent to the hospitals?
Outside, the mayor, Jerry Abramson, on the scene early, helped carry victims out on stretchers from the building. This photograph of him was shown nationwide. So this is where you stood 30 years ago, close to it. You probably haven't been back to this spot since then.
No, I haven't. It was really scary. But the families that suffered so much, they're the ones that you really have to feel for.
Whether it was learning to talk or becoming mobile like he is today.
I'm Melissa Forsythe.
By that night at 11 o'clock, the tragedy of Standard Gravure was clear. 8 people killed, 12 people shot and injured.
Doug Profit is live tonight at University Hospital with the latest on the efforts to save and treat those victims. Doug?
Melissa, the surgeries lasted all day. The wounded, Michael Campbell, age unknown, is in stable condition.
From that night on, I've kept an eye on the survivors. 30 years later, Mike Campbell.
All of a sudden, the door opened, and you've never seen a gun that big this far away. You know, it is huge. It is huge. So he just went around the room and shot us 3 times.
But Westbecker wasn't finished. He came back for a second round at Campbell. How many times were you shot?
I was shot 6 times.
Where?
Both arms and both legs.
We now go to the
Shattered my elbow,
topmost floor.
hit my knee.
Westbecker actually started on the top floor. He was looking for the owners, the top executives of Standard Gravure, and Jackie Miller was working in HR.
I had a gun with me, and I was going to stop and get my gun, and this voice said, no, don't do that. If it's nothing, you'll get fired. You can't afford to lose your job. And unfortunately, I went without my gun.
She came face to face with the 47-year-old.
And I saw him, and he saw me. And we just stood there, and we just stared at one another. And I'm telling you, there was nothing there. He was gone. Whatever makes us human was gone, and I knew I was going to die.
Miller is pro-gun, and that stance, she says, has made her one of the most controversial of the survivors. She regrets not using it.
If I'd have died too, I'd have taken him with me. 12 other people would have not been involved.
Shot in the chest, stomach, pelvis, and right leg. The bullets all exited her quickly.
He shot me 4 times with the AK-47. I was very blessed. Because he used the AK-47, I got to live.
But the weapon did its damage. You were shot in the head.
Yeah, above the ear.
Right here?
This way.
Gus. Good boy. John Stein is surrounded by the big Stein family in southern Indiana.
We have the Man of Steel standing here.
All of them still amazed 30 years later at his recovery. He's tireless.
I don't think there's been a day in his life that he wasn't relentlessly working on getting better.
I went along with John on his daily walk.
Whether I like it or not, I have to walk.
And Gus, the golden retriever.
Describe for me where you were shot that day.
Well, I can't remember.
But he's since been told he was standing at an elevator.
So you were at the elevator.
Yes, and the gunman inside, and they reloaded and opened fire, blank range, and a couple of maintenance guys shot also. They died.
John's had to relearn his ABCs, talk and walk again. He remembers the very first words he actually put together when former IU basketball coach Bobby Knight called him in the hospital.
Call him Moses.
Stein and others thought maybe Standard Gravure would be the tragedy that changed the country. The mass shootings today?
It is unbelievable. They can't bring it to conclusion.
Stein wants gun control on assault weapons, not personal weapons. The opinion about mass shootings among the victims is on polar opposites.
Standard Gravure, they haven't learned anything from any of these shootings. All these people know how to do is scream, gun, gun, gun. Well, I want to tell people something. That day I was shot, that gun did not walk in by itself.
Miller and Mike Campbell agree on one thing. Prozac, a new depression drug in 1989, which later went on trial after the shooting, was one factor in their opinions.
He said himself that it made him feel like he had bugs in his head. Prozac exacerbated what was going on with him at that time. That was not a good drug for him. The doctor already said, I'm going to take him off that.
A human being getting psychiatric help on a bad psychiatric drug that they know he couldn't take shot me.
I'd never seen what an assault weapon could do to a human body. And having seen that, it was very clear in my mind that there was no reason for these to be available to anyone in the United States but for the United States military.
The former mayor says the 10-year ban on assault weapons should never have been allowed to expire. He agrees, sadly, Standard Gravure has been forgotten.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, you know, we've become calloused as a society.
The Standard Gravure people have been forgotten. There is no legacy.
It just took a big chunk out of my life. That's all I can say.
Talking about it 30 years later is tough for Stein. That's why he was surrounded by his family. But he's remarkably straightforward.
Get over it and getting forward.
And to the point when it comes to the haunting legacy of Louisville's worst workplace violence and reality.
Who's Standard Gravure? Who's the shootings? They don't remember anymore.